You're smart, you're motivated, you want to do something big. You're on the verge of being a young boss, and we're going to help you get there. I'm your host, Isabel Garino, and welcome to the Young Boss Podcast, where youth is your power. It's no secret that America has a fascination with denim. From old Western heartthrobs like John Wayne and James Dean to pop culture icons like Bruce Springsteen and Paul McCartney. Western wear is quite literally part of the fabric of this country. And little did I know this Americana fashion staple is being designed right here in the Valley. Today's guest is none other than Nick Wetta, the owner, founder, and designer of West Major, a modern Western wear manufacturer based in Phoenix, Arizona. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great intro.
I'm so excited that you're here.
Yeah.
It's the coolest thing.
Thanks.
So you're designing clothes.
Yeah.
Creating them.
Yeah.
Selling them.
Yes.
Like
yeah.
Full throttle. This isn't like we're putting graphics on a t-shirt and like this is like detailed.
Yeah. They're made. And I don't know if I would call myself a fashion designer, but that's the role I'm playing right now for West Major. But yeah, like they're all, I come up with the design, the fit, all the little details, source all the material. Everything's made from scratch at a factory.
Amazing.
Mostly in California or Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know you wanted to do this?
No, I didn't.
What got you into it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a long story, but I always loved Western shirts.
Okay.
I grew up here in Phoenix, and it was kind of through playing music. I played drums growing up, was really into like music and classic rock and vintage clothes. I would go to like Buffalo Exchange all the time and find cool old vintage Western shirts. So I'd always loved Western shirts. And then as I got older, kind of right out of college, I felt like none of the Western brands were, they all the existing Western brands felt kind of old and outdated. And so I would find these great vintage shirts, but then when I would go to the mall or shop anything being new, I was just like, there's nothing that has the same kind of vibe. And so that seed had been planted in my head when I was like 18. And then years later, I was working in production in LA and was kind of like, I didn't want to live in LA anymore. And I had wanted to start my own business. And it's a long story, but basically just that idea kind of surfaced again of like, why don't I start making Western shirts? Like I've always wanted to. And so that's pretty much how it started.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you even begin from having this idea of being I want to do this to putting it on paper and then in material? Like, what research do you even have to do to say, where do we get this material or what structure do I do? I've been doing it now for like almost 6 years and I'm still learning all the time. Yeah. But basically I had this idea and then one day I was at my apartment in Santa Monica and a friend of mine who I went to college with just randomly stopped in, this guy, Stephen Borelli. He has gone on to start this clothing company called Cuts, which is like huge, $100 million in sales or something. At this time, this was like before he had started his Kickstarter campaign and he had just stopped in my place because I lived with another guy we were all friends with. And anyway, he was like, I'm starting this t-shirt company called Cuts. It's going to be huge. And I was like, wow, no way. I've had this idea for Western shirts. Yeah. And so he had already kind of started that initial research and journey into how do you start a clothing business and like cut and sew clothes. Right. He loved my idea and was like, dude, I'll help you kind of get you started. And so he kind of gave me the initial like kick to get going and kind of pointed me in the right direction. But basically I just hired someone that knew how to design clothes. Okay. And I was like, here's what I want to do. And then she kind of like, helped me work through the first sample and prototype. It ended up like not really working out that well. And so then I went to but that's like how it started. Yeah. And then I just kept going. Yeah. Yeah. When I think about some of the guests that we've had on and so many different businesses, sometimes it has a lot of upfront
costs
involved. Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't at all.
Yeah.
You're in an industry that has a lot of upfront costs.
Yeah.
I mean, I have heard you're saying, hey, I gave my designs, to this lady and basically said, hey, let's test it out.
Yeah.
I've heard multiple stories of that happening, and the first round never being what you envisioned or whatever.
Yeah.
So what did that look like? Did you raise capital? Did you bootstrap it yourself?
Yeah.
How did you work that out?
So I didn't raise any money. It's I just, throughout this entire process, I worked second jobs and self-funded it. So I just have lived very, very lean.
Yeah.
I had some savings I put into this is like over years of doing it. Yeah, I just, especially starting out, I didn't want to use someone else's money when I knew I was going to be lighting most of it on fire while I tried to like learn how to do this. So yeah, I would take my paycheck, pay rent, and then whatever was left over, put into starting this business. And yeah, it was just years of hiring someone that in the world of clothing and like in a lot of industries, there's sort of like development companies that will kind of help you develop out a concept and get a sample made and like a prototype. So that's kind of the initial road I went down, and then like got burned by a lot of people, but all along the way, like learning and meeting people and making connections, and then eventually you kind of find your own people to go through versus like one company that like marks it up. And I don't know if I'm explaining this that makes sense.
It's
but
really interesting.
Yeah. So you just kind of keep, but once you get that first sample, you're like, okay, I've got something, and like all these things are wrong with it.
Yeah.
But now I have something physical to show the next person.
Yeah.
Then you go to the next person, you're like, okay, here's my sample.
Yeah.
But like it's too small here and it fits weird here. Can you fix this?
Yeah.
And then like they take the ball a little bit further. And then eventually I found a factory that could make Western shirts. And then that was a whole nother like avenue, is then you start like making, hundreds of shirts at a time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah. I would imagine so.
Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful thing for you to be able to say that, like, hey, no, I had to work another job to make this happen.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they will say, hey, I'm going to raise capital for this, right? And undercapitalization is a huge thing. Okay, you blew through all their money.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Go back to them and ask for more?
Totally. Yeah.
Like, they're not going to want to work with you much longer.
Yeah, I think you can definitely get into a bad situation. And like every business is different. I'm sure if I had someone on my team that knew how to do this part of it, maybe that would have made more sense. It was just me. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I got into this wanting to work for myself.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like if I had raised money, that dynamic might change a little bit. I just wanted as much freedom as possible.
Okay.
So that it was also worth it for me to put my own money into it, because I didn't want to have to compromise anything or answer to someone else. Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think there's a million ways
ways
to do something.
There totally
so I think it's really cool that you are saying like, hey, no, this is how I did it and what worked for me.
Yeah.
At 6 or 8 years in the business.
I first started working at it 6 years ago. I've only been in business selling for 4 years. So there was like 2 years of just grinding, trying to figure it out. And I will say now I'm in a place where I'm now actually looking at maybe raising money, but the business is now profitable. I kind of know what I'm doing. So now I feel like I could deploy it in a way that would like
make sense,
help.
Yeah.
So like to your point, it's just depends where you are, what the business is. And
how long did it take you to get to profitable?
4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, since like I sold my first shirt, this is the first year actually.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks. And I mean, it's still like, I was talking to the producers of your show, like it's still touch and go. Like I'm still in the early chapters of this business and brand.
Yeah.
But like this last year, it's every year you just learn. And the past year has really been like a masterclass in margins and like learning about, I need to have like a certain margin to be profitable.
Yeah.
And so now we're doing that. Yeah.
I think, first of all, thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of listeners think like, oh, I'm going to give it 1 year of my best effort. And then it's like, okay, you're probably not going to be super successful in year one, more than likely in most most businesses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you're like, okay, maybe I'll do year 2. And it's like, no, a lot of times it's going to take grinding for a while until you see something.
Yeah. And I think it depends like what you're doing.
Yeah.
How much experience you have with like a product business.
Yeah.
Where you're making a physical product. It's just like, it requires a ton of money.
Yeah.
And development. And so it just takes years of like getting the product to a place where you're like, okay, I'm not embarrassed to show this to someone.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you ever want to give up?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. 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 But I think I love it. That's what keeps me in it. Is like I truly love doing it.
Okay.
I love the shirts. I love making shirts. I love like seeing how you can take a guy that like, you know, maybe he's a little slouched over, doesn't feel great about himself. You put him in one of these like nice shirts and you can tell he just feels better about himself. And I love all of it. So that's what keeps me in it. And it's like I didn't get into it thinking this will be like a quick way to make money. Okay. It's like, what's something I'll love doing for my entire life. And so that's kind of the timeline.
Yeah.
So 4 years, like in the grand scheme of things it's really not that much. Yeah. But yeah.
I think that's amazing too, because I think that there are a lot of businesses that people do get into for money.
For sure.
And for you to say that and be like, no, like I actually want something that I'm going to love to do. And it sounds like it's also something you're constantly learning and growing in.
Totally.
Which has got to be a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
It's like every mistake is a total opportunity to be like, okay, what do we do? What do we do from here?
Yeah,
you know?
Totally.
I think that's really cool. What was some of the major challenges you faced like in the beginning of starting the business?
In the beginning, I would say lack of capital, lack of knowledge, experience. I had initially launched with a Kickstarter campaign. Okay. And it was fairly successful. I raised like $17,000. Okay. There were all pre-orders for shirts. I made the shirts and I just didn't know what I was doing and I didn't do the sizing correctly. Okay. And so the arms were too skinny.
Okay.
And so I shipped like 300 shirts and maybe 80% of them, like guys couldn't bend their arms in the shirt. So there was a lot of just setbacks like that.
Yeah.
That took time to like work through.
Yeah.
So yeah, money, time, experience, having to work. So I eventually left my career in production and then I started bartending at night so I could do this during the day.
Yeah.
That was really hard, like just working 7 days a week, you know, for a long time. Yeah.
And like all day. It's
all
like
day, yeah.
You stop one job to start the next.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of being an entrepreneur and starting your own thing.
It is for me. I don't know, maybe for you, but
no, I feel like that really is a lot of people's reality. It's like, hey, I've got to do something that supports this in the meantime.
Yeah.
Because this is my actual dream.
Yeah.
But until it starts making more money,
for sure,
it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you love what you're doing, it makes it like it's weird because I'm completely overworked, but even on like the worst days, it doesn't feel like work that like it does when you're working a job necessarily.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a different feeling.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Marketing. How do you market clothes? Because was it a lot online? Did you immediately go to stores and try to get into them? What does that look like?
Yeah. So when I first started, things have changed a little bit, but social media and running ads on like Facebook and Instagram, it used to be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Its algorithms and everything have changed, so it's a little more difficult now. But in the early days, I was just actually through Steven from Cuts, I kind of like followed a lot of the advice he gave me and he just jumped into running Facebook ads and getting it out that way. And it was, I kind of just followed the same process and started running ads. And I've hired a couple people over the years, but through most of that time, I just sort of learned how to do it myself.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything, you watch like tons of YouTube videos and dive in and start doing it. And then, so Instagram and then like just posting organically to social media. And then eventually a lot of the stores that I'm in now just came organically through being on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah. So they would just, you start growing your following and then stores see you and you follow each other and then they DM you and that's how it starts. Yeah.
Wow. Because I would assume that is a whole nother grind, going out there being like, can I get my shirts in there? And then what do you provide to them? Sizing, did they guide you on that?
No, they don't. It is a whole, like the proper way to do it, and probably how I will do it in the near future is you go to trade shows. A lot of the big clothing brands have actual reps that go around, and like it's a whole business. So to really like do it, you got to attack it hard. It's only like 10% of my sales now. But yeah, you send them what's called a line sheet. Okay. And it's basically all of your products. It has your wholesale pricing, your suggested retail pricing, your sizes. You send it to them. Maybe they ask to see a sample, maybe they don't. And then they just tell you like, okay, we'll take 10 of these, and
that's it.
You ship them. Yeah. And hopefully they sell them.
And if they don't, what happens?
Luckily, pretty much all the stores I'm in have reordered from me.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, and my shirts are expensive, so it's got to be a store that has that clientele.
Yeah.
So they don't sell super fast, I would say, because it's a higher priced item. But everything I've ever made, I eventually sell, and I think most of the stores that are the right fit have the same experience.
Okay.
So yeah.
Is there any specific markets that do better than others? I'm thinking for you like Vail, Aspen, and then like Dallas.
Yeah, well, Texas is the number one state.
Texas? Okay.
Yeah, Texas buys just the whole state. I mean, it's a huge state, but the state of Texas buys more shirts from me than any other. I think maybe California's net. Arizona's like 4 or 5 down on the list, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, New York's big. Colorado. Yeah. I think it's like anyone can wear them. Okay. You know, it's not like some of the Western brands like really go hard in the paint, targeting real actual cowboys, which is awesome. I didn't grow up. I just grew up in the city. Yeah. So I just kind of made Western shirts for me. And I feel like there's a lot of just kind of regular everyday guys that feel like they can wear them. And so, New York, some of the cities do well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Is there like I'm thinking, okay, Yellowstone is about to come out soon, right?
Yeah.
The rest of the season we've all been waiting for forever.
Yeah.
Is there like a goal or something like that where it's like, hey, being seen on a specific show or being in a specific store is like, oh my God, that's the peak of joy for me. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, I would say not so much shows for me, although, I mean, it'd be amazing to be on to have my stuff in some of those shows, but there are a couple stores that are like, you know,
the goal.
Yeah, they would be like the mecca to get in. And they're not even necessarily that big. They're just kind of
the perfect client.
They've got if you get into that store, you're like, you've made it. You know, there's a couple of those. And then for me, like a huge inspiration is music. Mm-hmm. And so there's more just musicians I'd love to get the shirts on. Yeah. And not even for the benefit of like any potential sales, but just that's a lot of the inspiration I get. And so it's just cool to see guys I like wearing them. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I actually, it is kind of like a great musician shirt, I feel like. Yeah. You know, like could a cool band. Corey would work with someone wearing that, I feel like.
Definitely, yeah.
Hey, it's Isabel. Thanks for listening to the Young Boss podcast. I recently wrote a book called Young Boss, and it's filled with top tips I've learned over the years on how to survive and thrive in business. Pre-order your copy now by heading to the link in the podcast description. Now, back to the show. When it comes to e-commerce, because obviously it's one thing to buy things in store, you've been through business in COVID.
Yeah.
E-commerce has been up and coming, but really took a massive, jolt around COVID. Yeah. How has that changed for you? Yeah. You're selling directly online. Is there any strategies you try to use with e-commerce that maybe you weren't aware of or had to really learn?
Well, so for me, I sold my first shirt in the fall of 2019. Mm-hmm. So from like the fall through that winter, I sold out of everything that I had. It wasn't a crazy amount, like 300 shirts or something. But then I went into 2020 like ready to hit the ground running, and then COVID hit. Yeah. And so for most of that year, the factory I work with shut down, all the fabric suppliers I work with shut down. So I was just out of stock of everything for most of that first year. But then the next year we grew a lot. So yeah, it's kind of been like the last few years I've just been insane, I think, for everyone. Just with like, COVID and just like all the politics stuff and inflation. And so I feel like the fact that I've just, and for anyone to have just survived the last few years, it's like, I can't wait for when there's another economic boom, like a sustainable one. But yeah, selling online, I think, like I don't know how like in the weeds we want to get here, but Shopify, I think is like just the best platform, easiest platform to use for like hosting an e-commerce store. Yeah. And then when it comes to running ads, there's a program that I paid for. So there's this agency called Common Thread Collective, and they run ads for like really big brands. I can't afford them, but they have this little program called Admission. Okay. It's like $250, $300 a month. And they basically just show you everything they do with their clients, from email marketing to Facebook ads. And it's like very legit, real, practical information. So through paying for that, I learned a lot on how to do it myself. Yeah. So yeah, I think for anyone that's kind of in that like beginning phase, they can literally pay for that and just probably run their own ads, do their own email marketing, and get from 0 to low 6 figures. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want to stick with just shirts? Do you want to open it up? Do you want to do boots and jeans and jackets?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I've got like 1,000 ideas. Okay. This is like version 1 of West Major right now. I'm working on a denim jacket, a t-shirt, a bunch of other like products and accessories and stuff. Yeah, it's a whole like Western brand that I eventually want to create, and ideally try to make most of it here in Arizona eventually.
Okay. Yeah. Because that's another thing. You're an American-made brand.
Right. Yeah.
Has that been a good choice, a hard choice?
Yeah, I would say it's a difficult choice. I have people reach out all the time that are want to start clothing brands and like are looking for advice and stuff. And I honestly tell them, don't make anything here. Yeah. Because it's the most, with apparel and specifically woven shirts, it's the most expensive, most difficult, least profitable way to do it. Yeah. Like you're just shooting yourself in the foot. But for me, it's just the Western shirt comes from the United States. So I feel like, I don't know, I'm too far down that road at this point. And now it's kind of become this like, I don't know, kind of like I want to prove them wrong sort of thing that I just can't give up on. Okay. So yeah, it's really hard, really difficult, but it's also really rewarding too. Making things in your own backyard, and there's an element of it that gets kind of addicting. Yeah. So
I have seen a ton of documentaries lately coming out on fast fashion and how scary and kind of terrible it is, right? Yeah. Society, right? For the people who are working there. And then as far as like pollution and stuff like that goes. Obviously with your brand, it's like higher quality. The clothes are lasting longer, right? People are paying more, but they're getting better quality. Yeah. What changes in the fashion industry do you see? And do you think that there's going to be anything that's like, man, I'm scared for this because it could just take us out, or not really?
I wouldn't say I'm really a fashion guy. Yeah. Like I kind of think of it as just making clothes for me. Like I don't really follow fashion trends necessarily, but I get what you're saying. And making stuff in the US it's a tough, that continues to seem to be sort of a dying thing. Yeah. But I think there are weird little opportunities and ways to make it work. And then I think, like with fast fashion and stuff, I mean, it's a very like apparel manufacturing, and again, I'm still learning every year, but it's a very like twisted, kind of dark, dirty industry. There's a lot of sweatshops in the US. Really? So there was an article I was reading yesterday about, there's a lot of the apparel manufacturers in LA and stuff that are technically sweatshops for sure. And a lot of the factories overseas are substantially cleaner and better working conditions than factories here. So it's not like this black and white thing. Right. It's like very messy, and just because something's made overseas and maybe is really affordable doesn't mean that it's slave labor. Yeah. And just because something is made here in the US and expensive doesn't mean it's not slave labor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. You just kind of have to, feel it out with the brands you buy from.
Yeah.
And I think also just, I'm kind of getting way off track from your initial
You're
question.
fine. No, I didn't actually know that. So that's,
yeah.
That is good. And I do think that people make an assumption when something is made in America. They're like, oh, then it's made by like people
great.
who are getting fair wages and have a great work environment and everything's good. And, and it's like, that's not the reality.
It's not the reality at all. So you were asking about trends. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I don't know. Yeah.
With fast fashion, obviously they're constant, like there's new items daily, right?
Yeah.
So do you ever feel the pressure to be like, oh, I have to put out new stuff all the time? And how do you decide what to put out next?
Yeah, it's definitely. And I think also it's just, that's kind of the fun part for me, is making new things.
Okay.
Because once I make one shirt, I'm like, that's cool. And it's fun, but you get over it after a while. And so the most exciting part is sourcing new fabric and making new stuff and just continuing to push that like envelope. And so, the process is like fairly simple, sort of in a it's not, but it kind of is, where, I mean, right now, like I pretty much just have my main basic Western shirt, and it took me years to develop the fit and everything. It's pretty locked in now. Like I'm always making little tweaks, but the process is basically, there's these fabric wholesalers and mills all over the world, and they're constantly designing and developing new fabric. And then you source stuff from them. So they'll send you like books of all these little swatches of like, stuff that looks like this rug to like something you're wearing to, denim, leather, whatever. And you just pick like, this might be a cool shirt. This might be a cool shirt. And then you order that fabric in small quantities. You make samples and you just slowly like narrow it down to a couple that you're like, yes, this would be a badass shirt to make. And that's the process. And then you make it, and then sometimes it doesn't sell, and you're like, okay, I thought it was cool, but no one else did. And then other times you make one and you're like, this is okay, but people love it. So it's just this constant like game of just trying things and learning. And then over time, you just start to get better at picking things out and like sourcing materials and finding better fabric mills. And that, again, that's like the addiction, I think, of just, there's no end to it.
Yeah.
So that's the process for me.
You said you wouldn't want to work for anyone else.
Yeah.
What is the hardest part about being your own boss?
Paying my bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, sometimes, for sure. Yeah. No, I think honestly that's probably the hardest part, is like for me, I don't have a steady paycheck.
Yeah.
And I'm still growing the brand. I'm still building it. And it's constantly this battle of like, I don't want to take any money out of it. I want to keep as much in as I can to keep growing it and making new products and everything. So there's just like, I don't get a paycheck every other Friday. And so there's just like a thin layer of constant anxiety of like, financially, what will the next 6 months look like? You never really know, at least where I am in this phase of the business. Other than that, there's just like ups and downs with like things not going well, experience a lot of failure, but you get better at like working through that failure. And like, that's probably it.
I would imagine through this process, you have learned a ton about yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What's one of the biggest things that you've like, I did not know this about me, but this is true. This is me.
Yeah. I don't know how deep we want to get here. But I would say like...
This is your therapy session. You didn't know?
Yeah. I think like one thing I'm kind of working through right now is, I don't know, to be honest, I don't know if I'm the like CEO type.
Yeah.
I love starting things and taking something from 0 to 1 and kind of that like founder role.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the guy to like really scale a business and like build out a team. That's something I'm like working through right now.
Yeah.
And for a while I was trying to force that. And now I'm toying with the idea of like, maybe that's just not what I like doing.
Yeah.
look to partner for someone that has that skill set.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's like one thing I'm kind of thinking through right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I can be very indecisive also.
Okay.
I would say I've learned that. Like having to make like quick decisions is something that did not come naturally to me. That is something else I'm working through.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's a constant like, whoa, didn't realize that, and let's poke that a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Whenever you get to that point where you're like, okay, I need to bring someone on who has these supplemental skills as me.
Yeah.
I think you staying in your genius of saying, I like to, here's my idea, start it, light the fire. You keep the stokes going, and that's being a boss. Like you can do that.
Yeah.
When you're partnered with the right person who can catch the vision and say, yes, I got it.
Yeah.
I'll keep going, with your idea.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a constant, like, this is really the first business I've started.
Yeah.
So every year is sort of a new chapter and it's kind of like unfolding all the time.
Right.
So yeah. What about you?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I've learned so much about myself just being in business, but I think I have a lot of employees and independent contractors, like almost 50 people.
Wow. Okay.
And I think I'm way more of a pushover than I thought I was. I probably thought I was more of like a hard ass when I first started. And then it's like, once you're dealing with people, their kids, their situation, you're like, it's the holidays, we can't fire them. Like, even though you're like, no, I know I need to fire them.
Yeah. That's got to be really hard. Like getting to know people and then having to let people go and I don't like thinking about doing that type of stuff, which is why I'm like, I don't know if I want to be in your shoes necessarily. So
it's just every industry is so different, and that's so fun about this podcast is that we get to hear what's happening with everybody and what's going on. And a lot of people really, because we're talking to young bosses, young entrepreneurs, almost everybody is in the phase where they're like, hey, I'm still kind of in my startup phase.
Oh yeah.
To an extent, right? They might be 1 year in, they might be 8 years in, but they're like, I'm still in startup.
For sure.
And it makes sense because of their age. It's like they couldn't have started this when they were 12, like we get it. So it's been fun to hear what that looks like for everybody, because some people are like scale. Others are like, I'm terrified to scale, and they're like, I just want to hold it all. And it just ranges so much.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think the only thing you can do is just know yourself. And so just honing in on those are your skills. Those are the things you love. So on the other hand, what has been one of your favorite parts of being your own boss or doing this and running the business?
Every day I'm so engaged in it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about like on the way here, how when I had my previous jobs before doing this, not in all of them, but in a lot of them, I would always get this sort of pit in my stomach on Sunday afternoons. Like the weekend.
Sunday scary.
Yeah, the weekend's over and you're like, fuck. I gotta go back into work. It's Monday again. I got a whole nother week. And I didn't have that in every job, but there was a lot of them where I think in working for myself, that's not there anymore. It's just every day is just sort of another day. And I work if I can, as much as I can. There's just never that feeling of needing to turn it off. Really, it's just like kind of a part of me and who I am. And it's not like I go to a job and then I have my leisure time. It's just
life.
It's just life. Yeah. So I guess it just feels more like, I don't know if like authentic is the right word, but I don't have to put on some sort of like mask and go into a job. I just get to live. Sort of. Yeah.
I feel like it sounds like you're living a lot in your why and in your passion.
Yeah.
And there's people who literally work their whole lives and have an idea, oh, I love this type of clothes. I wish there was more of this. Never do anything about it. They just sit their whole lives wishing and dreaming and working for someone else and never making anything come because they're scared. They have imposter syndrome, this, that, and the other. And it sounds like you have been able and willing to be like, I don't know what I'm doing, and that's okay. I'm just gonna push through, make it happen, and learn along the way, and not be. It sounds like you're not afraid of failure.
I mean, it hurts. I definitely, and that's another thing I've had to work through a lot of. But and also, there's nothing wrong with having to work a job either. And some of the best learning experiences I've ever had have been working for other people, and even to this day, there's certain founders of brands, if there was an opportunity to go work for them, even for free, I would probably go do it just to learn.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like knock any,
Agreed,
and it's awesome making money too sometimes. So but
so no hate.
Yeah, no hate. But yeah, I think like going through this, having to work through those fears of failure, it definitely, you realize like it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, this idea of failing is this big, scary kind of monster in the beginning, and then you start to experience it a little bit, and it's not anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's just kind of like learning how to work through the failure. And I think in starting a business, I'm sure you experience this, it's like there's just a lot of little micro failures, whether it's like an employee not working out or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just get used to, it's just a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like not, it's
not
what you
the
sign
end.
up for.
Yeah.
It's just not the end. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's something that holds people back. But once you become comfortable with that monster who lives in the corner, it's like, okay, like it's going to happen. I'm going to face it. It's all about what do we do next? How do we view it?
Yeah.
And how do we push forward? Because it's not going away.
No. Yeah, there's just more of it coming.
More.
Yeah, there's just a lot more coming. So yeah, you just gotta lean into it.
Lean in.
Yeah, survive.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah.
Where can we find out, or where can we shop for your clothes?
Yeah, so westmajor.com is our website.
Okay.
At westmajor on Instagram. If you're in Phoenix, we've got some shirts in Rooster Bus, which is in Old Town.
Yeah.
And then Cave and Post, which is in Central Phoenix. And then there's some more retailers in Texas, one in Colorado. Those are all on our website.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It was a lot of fun to hear all about the industry and your journey along the way. And
thanks.
I have a feeling we're going to have you back here in like another 4 years, and you're going to be like, now I'm selling $1 million, you know, every month or something crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of the Young Boss Podcast with your host, Isabel Garino. Be sure to like, share, and follow on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And let us know, is there a type of clothing that you have always wanted to make? Remember, youth is your power.